This is a 2022 Mazda CX-5 2.5 turbo all-wheel drive, and it's painted in Soul Red Crystal Metallic, which is a $595 optional color. And I am very happy to be back behind the wheel of a Mazda, even though it's a compact crossover SUV Mazda. Mazda did update the CX-5 for 2022, and one of the changes they made is that every CX-5, no matter the trim, is now all-wheel drive. Mazda did make some styling changes in the front and the back as well, and I'll show you just a little bit more of that in a couple of minutes. This is, however, still on the second generation Mazda CX-5 platform, which has been with us since the 2017 model year. The 2.5 turbo is one of 8 trims offered on the Mazda CX-5, and in terms of price, that puts it above the 2.5S, 2.5S Select, S Preferred, S Carbon Edition, S Premium, and S Premium Plus. But it is beneath the top of the line model, which is the 2.5 Turbo Signature. It being one of the highest trims that Mazda offers, it does have a lot of creature comforts in this car, like heated seats for both the first and second rows, not to mention cooled seats for the front and a heated steering wheel, also a wireless smartphone charger. But this is the least expensive trim where you can get the turbocharged 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. More on that in a couple minutes. But the Mazda CX-5 is also now a little brother of sorts, as Mazda introduced the all-new 2023 Mazda CX-50, which is very similar to this, but it's just a little bit bigger and has feature sets that are a little bit different than this one. And I did actually do a review of that a few months ago, and I have a link up there in this corner if you want to check that out. My name is Robin Warner, by the way, an experienced engineer and magazine editor. Welcome. I review all kinds of cars, from a $25,000 Ford Maverick to a $425,000 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I'll happily jump into Honda Accords, BMW M3s, and Porsche 911 GT3s. And I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. With all those trims, there is of course a large variation in price. In fact, the base trim Mazda CX-5, the 2.5S, starts well under $30,000, but the base price for this car, the 2.5 turbo, is $37,625. And my test car did have a couple of options, like the paint, and it goes for $38,670. Also, quick mention, the 23 model year Mazda CX-5s might be a couple $100 more. So with all that, I think this is a good time for me to pull over and show you around and inside the car. For 2022, the Mazda CX-5 did get some styling tweaks. They played around with the bumper, this area right here, and the what they call front wing, this little piece of plastic right here. Also, because this is a turbo model, the front grille and this wing I just mentioned is in gloss black. So new design and gloss black for the turbo. Plus, fun little detail, these 4 red lines, horizontal slots built into this gloss black grille, I think is a nice little detail. Also, Mazda did update the headlights and taillights for the CX-5 in 2022, and they have this cooler look with these different LED elements in the lights. Looking at the Mazda in profile, it's got the pretty standard compact SUV 2-box shape, but there are nice little details that I like. Again, because this is a turbo model, we have gloss black side view mirror coverings. That's a nice touch. And also this polished metal finish for the lower window trim is nice as well. I'll go ahead and put the dimensions on the screen right now, but if you look at wheelbase length, width, and height, you can see that this is very competitive with the other compact SUVs in the segment, and just a tiny touch smaller than the new CX-50. And by the way, I have a full set of specs in the description. Because this is not a 2.5S, S Select, or S Preferred model CX-5, I have 19 and not 17-inch wheels. And because it's a turbo model, they are in this nice black finish. Looking at the car from the back, for 2022, Mazda did update the bumper and the tailgate design just a little bit. Also, we've got bigger dual exhaust tips underneath, and as you can hear, those are very real, and I always appreciate that. Plus, CX-5 all-wheel drive, that's kind of redundant these days, and yes, Skyactiv Turbo. Since we're back here, I think now is a good time to look at cargo space. electric opening tailgate, of course. You have 29 cubic feet of storage back here, and actually you have more than 30 if you have the loading floor in its lower position, because Mazda and the CX-5 offers 2 loading floor positions. So it's the lower one right now, and I'll go ahead and lift it to the higher one. Takes a little bit of work. Now it's at the higher floor. So the higher floor gives you an even space right here. So right from the loading platform, you go right to the floor. The lower one, you have a bit of a drop, but then you get more cubic feet overall. And of course, if you don't need to carry people in back, but need more than 29 cubic feet of storage, that's easy enough. And there's actually another neat little trick here. Mazda gives you 2 different levers on the driver's side. The smaller one here is for the center, so if you just need to pass through. And then the larger one is for the driver's side, and then passenger side. Now you have 59 cubic feet of storage, or if the loading floor is in its lower spot, you have more than 60 cubic feet of storage. All right, let's check out the inside. Compact SUV. So, compact SUV space back here, not bad, but not plentiful, right? That said, I do have, you know, an inch or 2 of knee room, and I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall. And I do have about an inch of headroom as well, and that's despite having a moonroof right here. Seat bottom is actually reasonably high as well, so I have decent thigh support, and of course, if I need it, I've got cup holders, and this is where it gets interesting. I also have heated seats back here. This is one of the higher trims, of course, and USB ports as well. So, rear passengers in the higher level trim CX-5s get good treatment back here. This would be very comfortable for a nice long trip. All right, let's check out the front. It is, yes, more spacious in the front, and you do have a lot of the typical controls. Obviously, power windows, power locks, side view mirror adjustments right there. 2-position seat memory is right on the seat, as well as seat adjustments. You do get lumbar support in addition to the usual stuff. Huzzah. Now, these are actually newly designed seats for 2022. Mazda says they were made to have more stability. I take that to mean a little bit more support, and you can see that there is thick, deep upper bolstering here and decent lower bolstering as well. You do have 2 real gauges on either side and then a small digital screen in the center. You also get a head-up display right there. Push button starts right here. You get a 10.25 inch, 10.25 inch center console screen right there. It is controlled by this dial right here, and this is standard across all of the trims, and it does of course work with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You do get dual zone climate controls, and not to outdo the rear seats, of course you get heated seats in front, but you also get cooled seats and a heated steering wheel. These are nice luxuries to have. Pretty standard looking Prindle. As I showed you the controls below, couple of cup holders, electric parking brake, and some more storage down here. And yes, you do get more USB ports to plug into back there. You also get wireless charging right there, which is a nice touch. This is a feature I always appreciate. Looking up, you do get a sunglasses holder and a couple controls for lights and stuff. And here are your controls for your moonroof with the manual privacy panel right here. Finally, drive modes. Now, the drive modes are not on all trims of the Mazda CX-5, but this being a turbo model, I definitely appreciate that they are here. And I also appreciate that Mazda keeps it nice and simple. 3 drive modes. You get normal, sport, or off-road. We'll be in normal most of the time, but we are going to spend a little bit of time in sport, and for this SUV, it's worth it. Let's get back to the drive. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. The base engine in the Mazda CX-5, and in fact, the engine that's in most trims of the CX-5, is a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, and it makes 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. But, as I mentioned earlier, this has the turbocharged 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, and that makes 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. Very, very good numbers. This turbo engine will run on regular gasoline just fine, a-okay, no problems whatsoever, but you will get a horsepower downgrade. It will make 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Still stout, but not quite as potent as when it's on premium fuel. And briefly, let me just say that that is true of most any modern engine these days. It will accept much lower octane fuel even if it asks for premium, but it will change the timing of the engine and you will not make peak power. The difference is that Mazda is honest and lets you know exactly what those numbers are. So I appreciate that Mazda takes the time to give us real world indications of peak power on premium fuel versus peak power on regular octane. I'll just add that the naturally aspirated engine, those peak outputs are on regular gasoline. So that is full power on 87 octane fuel. Officially, according to Mazda, the red line of this 2.5 liter turbocharged engine is 6,300 RPM, which is pretty typical for turbocharged engines these days. They tend to rev a little bit lower than the naturally aspirated counterparts. However, the peak power of this engine is at 5,000 RPM, which is a bit on the low side. More importantly, it falls off pretty sharply after that. So realistically, your red line is more like 53 to 5,500 RPM, which is definitely on the low side and a little bit of a bummer. The good news is that this comes with a 6-speed automatic as standard, and it's also the only transmission available, and it does a good job to shift under 6,000 RPM and give you stout power throughout your realistic driving range. Moreover, this engine makes good power at basically 2,000 RPM and up. Torque peak is at 2,500 RPM, and torque peak on regular gasoline is at 2,000 RPM. It's still a little bit of a bummer, but it's a very little bummer because it is masked really well by the way that the 6-speed transmission shifts. And yes, I will say briefly, that is fewer gears than we're used to these days, but Mazda did a really good job tuning this transmission, and the effects of having fewer gears is not really an issue at all. And as I said earlier, of course, this is all-wheel drive, so traction on acceleration is not an issue at all, and even in inclement weather, you have all 4 tires digging at their best. And more importantly, it's a good responsive engine. That is good punch from the mid-range, and it makes a nice sound too. That is good stout power right out of the box. And bear in mind, that is normal driving mode, not sport mode. So we're actually giving up a little bit of reaction time there, just a touch, but there is a little bit more there. It feels strong and balanced and smooth. It is definitely one of the higher end 4-cylinders out there. And I like the fact that we're talking about 2.5 liters of displacement. That's kind of on the high end these days, but more displacement gives you just a little bit more flexibility with mid-range power and torque response. So I really appreciate that. There is a downside, of course. More displacement does make it a little bit harder to achieve great fuel economy. 6 speeds instead of 8, 9, or 10 don't help either. And this is not the best fuel economy numbers you'll see. 22 miles to the gallon in the city, 27 miles to the gallon on the highway, 24 combined. Now, if you do go with the naturally aspirated engine, that does bump up to 24 miles to the gallon in the city, 30 on the highway, 26 combined. That is pretty competitive. But to be blunt, I'm much more interested to see how well this thing accelerates, so I had to test that out. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the CX-5 in sport mode, and I am quite curious to see what 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque do for us. All right, come to a complete stop, foot harder on the brake, bit of brake torque, and off we go. Little get of bark from the front tires there. That was a lot of launch coming on this car, and now we've got good pull. Good quick shifts from the transmissions, and yeah, stout. That is stout. Okay, the fact that it's a 6-speed and not an 8, 9, or 10 speed does not hinder us. We got good low-end grunt from the engine, good response, good shifts. This is a good, strong motor. When you have the automatic transmission, the early shifts don't hurt you much. Yeah, overall, very happy with that. And now we get to the good stuff. Mazda does such a good job to make every car they sell in North America feel really good behind the wheel. excellent driving feel, excellent driving engagement, and that is small SUV, big SUV, all the way down to their really nice sports car, the MX-5 or Miata. So with that tiny bit gratuitous buildup, let me show you how well this thing handles. All right, time for a handling test. I do have the car in sport driving mode, of course, and I have to admit, for an SUV like this, I'm expecting pretty good things. So let's see. Yeah, not bad acceleration, certainly. Yeah, good body control, good balance, good feel. Yeah, everything just works here. Oh man, yeah, even when you lean into it, you've got a real good sense of what the body's doing. Good body control, good chassis balance, even decent steering feel. This is a great little SUV to drive. You know, this is a small SUV. There's nothing inherently special about it, and yet it's enjoyable to take through some corners. So yeah, let's definitely turn around and do that again. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a lot of grip, but there's really good chassis balance, and it's really playful. Yeah, just a good, enjoyable car. This is a small SUV. This is built for very mundane family tasks. This is not built for driving pleasure, and yet it clearly is built for driving pleasure, and it shows that any car can be a fun car to drive if it's tuned the right way and there's effort put into making it feel that way. It's a great, fun handling car, and it's a good, practical, small SUV all at the same time. Absolutely love it. Mazdas are just good fun to drive. Yeah, I mean, it's a compact crossover SUV, and yet it's still entertaining behind the wheel. I so very much appreciate that. All right, but now we have to shift gears and talk about how well this rides. This is the tiniest bit on the stiff side compared to other compact crossover SUVs. For me personally, I do not mind it at all. I think this is a perfectly plenty compliant ride, and you have a real nice structure underneath you and a really well-tuned suspension, so that yes, it's a little bit stiffer, so feel the bumps just a tiny bit more, but none of it is harsh or unsettling. It's just not quite as soft as other cars out there. And that's true for roads like this or on the interstate. I took it out there as well. Let me show you that. All right, time for a quick stint on the interstate. We are back to normal driving mode in the Mazda CX-5, and I'm mainly curious to see what the ride is like and what wind and road noise is like, but we'll also give these driving assist systems a quick go, see if we notice anything there as well. Okay, we are up to speed, going with traffic right around 78 miles an hour. And right off the bat, I can say that wind noise is nicely isolated, not getting too much of that, and road noise as well is fairly well isolated. These Toyo tires are keeping nice and quiet, which is nice. We're going past a semi-truck right now, and you can definitely hear it, but it's not imposing too much. You know, it's a pretty faint noise in the background. Generally speaking, this is a nice, comfortable and quiet place. The ride is a touch on the firm side for some. You definitely feel when you're going over bumps and heaves in this more than you would in a common SUV, but it's completely fine for me. Nothing is harsh about it, and what that gives you is a much more responsive chassis when you are going through corners and other things like that. So to me, it's a very happy trade-off. Even in the sun, the center console touchscreen is really easy to read. Everything's within easy reach, easy to use. So yeah, this is a perfectly pleasant interstate cruiser as far as I'm concerned. And you know, 27 miles to the gallon on the interstate, it's not fantastic, but it's not bad either. So overall, great road trip car, I would say. So what do we have in this Mazda CX-5? We have a great compact SUV. Really fantastic high-end powertrain, splendid, wonderful driving dynamics, completely comfortable and adequate ride, high-end, I would say, higher than average noise, vibration, and harshness. This is a mainstream level SUV we're talking about here, and we're getting what I would say gets into premium category levels of all those things I just mentioned. On top of that, you've got plenty of space in this two-row SUV. I was actually pleasantly surprised with the comfort and space that the second row provided in the CX-5. That's despite also giving us nearly 30 cubic feet of cargo space behind that second row. And that's despite the fact that there's also the now slightly bigger Mazda CX-50. It looks sharp, it's comfortable inside, the switchgear is well laid out and generally easy to use, and I just think it has a lot of strengths. The one downside for me is this engine. I do wish it revved a little higher, or maybe the power fell off a little bit more subtly, more gradually as you got to the higher revs. That would really bring it up to just another level of engagement with the driver. But that ultimately really is a small gripe considering all the strengths that I just mentioned. I mean, if you have to have one car and you have a small family and you have a lot of requirements for space like this, but you still want to get your driving jollies on here and again, you can do all of that with this one machine right here. And that is laudable. That is very laudable. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you are still watching, I would really appreciate it if you liked this video. That helps me out quite a lot. Okay, goodbye. Shifts at 5,300 RPM, but we are still hustling.